Welcome to The Right Approach, sponsored by Cascades Golf Course. My guest today is PGA Tour professional Gary Robinson. Thanks for being here today, Gary.
Oh, more than welcome.
Well, I'm very excited to announce, I don't know if this is the first public announcement, but Brian Stewart is going to be inducted into the Jackson Golf Hall of Fame this year. The ceremony is going to be on Sunday, September 21st at Ellis Sharp Golf Course. And of course, Gary is Brian's longtime swing coach. So that's why we had you on today, Gary. We're going to talk a little bit about Brian Stewart and his career. Now, I believe you started working with Brian when he was in high school. He graduated from Napoleon High School in, I believe, 2000.
Yes, I think so.
And so just kind of curious, what kind of player was Brian when you first started working with him? You know, what were his strengths and weaknesses, and what was kind of your, kind of first kind of takeaways of Brian's game?
Well, Brian's a very quiet individual. I like somebody that gives me a lot of feedback. I mean, because when I teach, I'm going to know how's the lessons coming and, you know, what do you need to work on? And he was just kind of, you know, really quiet. And I remember down at the foundation in Coldwater, during the winter he came down, and his dad would bring him down, and Glenn, and ended up with his nephews too. And he hitting these 6-irons out to the flag, and I'd say, you like that shot? I mean, he'd be like 12, 15 feet. And he goes, I said, well, yeah, I want you to grade them for me. So he'd hit one, and it looked like about 8 feet, and I'd look at him, I go, from 1 to 10, 10 being high, what is that, Brian? And he, 6, and I go,
6?
I said, well, I look at that like a 9, maybe a hole-in-one is 10, but, you know, Ben Hogan had a high standard for himself, you know, when he practiced, and he never gave himself a 10, and, but that was the way I was, but then, as we went along, he started growing, and he's a silent learner. I mean, he would come probably, once a month, and then his game was just getting better and better and better, and he played in the Michigan Open. I think he lost to Tom Gillis, and I can't tell you the year. He finished second. Then when he got out of high school, he says, well, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, I don't know, most people get a job. But if you think you can play, go play, because you don't want to turn 50 and say, I wish I'd have tried.
Sure, yeah.
So rather than do what some kids do, is they run right to the big tour. Now everything's changed in qualifying and how you qualify. When I went to the tour schools, my first one, there was 475 people for 15 spots, 6 rounds, and that was it. But now they got a local, and then they had this, and now it's not even that. But I said, why don't you try playing the Hooters? It was a new tour, not real big, and he ended up with some sponsors and from local here, and he had enough money to go and play, and he wasn't staying in the Taj Mahals. He was, you know, so they wanted to fly me down there and see what he does in tournaments, because really my time here, I'd watch him play in our local events, you know, when he came to Arbor Hills, or maybe he was in the finals over there, and I'd go watch, and, you know, he's very competitive for a late starter, because, you know, I didn't start till I was 15, and that was in August, because my dad bought 2 sets of clubs. I said, Dad, I'm not going to play golf, I'm playing baseball, you know, and he says, well, leave them in the garage, and then along August, he talked me into it, and that's how I got started. But Brian played football. I think he was a quarterback. He was a good athlete.
Yeah, of course.
And he just kept getting better every year. You know, he just kept learning. And then when we learned to use the bounce, because when he's playing golf courses now, I mean, and he got to play Augusta because he did win the 2016 Zurich Classic when it was, you know, that was a medal tournament. Now it's a best ball, or 4-ball they call it, and he won in a playoff, and the third extra one, I think.
Which I'll never forget that. It was a rain-shortened 54-hole event.
Yeah.
And the playoff, they had to finish on Monday because of all the rain.
Right.
You know, so I remember going to work Monday morning and going, yeah, you know, Brian's in a playoff. I have to watch it. You know, I'm working for my dad, you know, at the time, and it's like, well, sorry, Dad, I got to go home because I got to watch this playoff, you know. And then sure enough, Brian wins, and yeah, I think you're right, third
Ben
playoff
on
hole.
and
Jamie Lovemark.
Ledmark, yeah.
Yeah.
And I used to see Jamie out there, and I said, hey, he won that 2016. He said, I know, Brian beat me in there. And I was surprised because if you've ever seen the Zurich, the last hole's got water on the right, and it's got two bunkers on the left. And Jamie was way longer, and Ben was a little longer than Brian, but he kind of pulled it into the trap, and he's sitting there and fiddling with his caddy with, you know, like a hybrid, and I'm thinking, I told my wife, if he hits that hybrid, I don't know, you know, the lip on that, and he did the right thing and laid it up. Lovemark pulled it to the left, and the pin was on it, so he was short-sided, and he made a pretty good shot. He didn't get it quite on, but he chipped it down there, so Brian hit, I think he hit a 7-iron from where he was because he had to lay up because of the lip. And he hit in there about 8 feet, 6, 7, maybe most 8. Drained it. So, hallelujah.
Yeah, which that week at the Zurich, you know, 54 holes, he went bogey-free, which is quite incredible. It doesn't happen very often.
It's really.
And his putting from like inside 10 feet.
Made everyone.
Made every single one.
That's
Didn't miss a putt inside 10 feet. That's pretty remarkable.
I think he went 305 holes once without 3-putting. And that wasn't the record. Somebody did like 320. But that play all those different golf courses with all the textures and like out in San Diego, the greens are
different grasses.
Different
and
grasses, and
yeah.
you have to adjust, and that's part of learning on the tour is all the different grasses that you have to deal with, and then getting used to them. Hitting out of those Bermuda lies and things, and the zoysia grass, and so I was at home. Unfortunately, I wasn't there that week, and so I'm watching it just like you were, and unbelievable. $1.3 million or whatever it was. That kind of gets you started pretty good. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of curious if we go back to, he went to Oakland University, and that's where he really kind of took off and started playing phenomenal golf. He graduated from Oakland in 2005, and like you said, you recommended, okay, play the Hooters Tour, which you did that for a few years, and jumped up to the Korn Ferry Tour.
Well, it was actually a nationwide
back then, but today.
But the same kind of thing, yeah. And he did pretty good there, so I said, well, now it's time. So he went to the tour school, and he made it. And that time, it wasn't so much about the FedEx points, it was more about the money. And he didn't make enough. He made like 600 or a little under 600,000, which all of us would like to have that for not making it, but you had to go back again.
You had to make like 750,000
it was,
or so,
up there. So he did pretty good for
a
rookie, I thought. But he came back, and then he made it back out there, and then he hung out. When you win, you're getting like a 3-year exemption, depending on when you do it. And gosh, he stayed out there, and that really opens up the door. Because you can set your schedules now, and all the stuff and that. But now, there's guys out there that have won $30-40 million, and they can't get in either. So, what do these guys do? A lot of them got enough dough, do they just
hang it up?
Yeah, do I play? But, they got kids now, but, for me, it was a fun time because my competitive days, I was lucky enough to play in a couple of U.S. Opens I qualified for, and one in 75 and 78. 5 Buick Opens I qualified through the section, and some national club pros and some local R events and chapter events I won. But when your back goes, your game goes. That's what's happened to me. So it's been about 5 years that I haven't played, and not played at all, really. Hit a few couple here and there to demonstrate, so I really don't know what I could do, but I'm not worried about it. I had a nice career.
Absolutely.
And I watched a guy grow his career. Then he got married to they were going to college. She was on the golf team for the girls. And they finally got married. One of you guys, because she was always saying that he was, that's my husband, but they weren't really married. That got her in the locker room and into the ladies and stuff, and all the, she'd eat in there because certain events that we were allowed to go in as coaches, and now these guys got their sports psychologists with them. They got their nutritionist guys with them. It's a little bit much, and he wouldn't like that anyway, because when we were hitting balls next to Tiger Woods at the Honda, he was looking at that TrackMan with Sean Foley from Canada, and I said, Brian, you want one of those? He goes, no. Because every shot you're going back, okay, you were steep on that, all right, that's going to be that. But he likes that. Yeah. Where most guys, they don't like it so much. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. But
so I'm just kind of curious, Brian, a great junior golfer, had a fabulous college career. Then he's out playing the mini tours, the Hooters Tour. When did you really start to think, hey, Brian can make it, he can make it all the way to the PGA Tour?
As long as I saw him getting better every year, which he did, I think he ended up winning one of the Hooters, and I think there were like 30,000. And I said, well, if you can do that, let's go nationwide, try and play. And he played, and he made some nice checks. And I said, you know what? You got to keep a good player, just like a horse. That's you gotta force him to get better, and you keep that carrot out there, and that's what makes him better. Because if you play and you can beat everybody, you don't get as competitive as you can. It's too easy. So when you then you start advancing, and that's when I thought. Now, he never had the length that he needed, and it always bothered him because, he's 5'10", probably went 175, and they're knocking it, I'm playing with Jason Day, sitting at 70 yards by him, and he said, how can I play with these guys? I said, well, you got to hit your 7-iron close, and he's going to hit his wedge close, but then you got to make a putt because, Zach Johnson wasn't long. No. He won the Masters, but he had a game plan. So the game plan was never to go for the par fives because, he was always borderline. And then, if you know the par fives just from watching TV, which most people do, most of them are reachable, but boy, you pay the risk for over and short. So we didn't go for a whole lot. And that it was fun being there. And to see him, he starts out with a 7 on his first hole.
First hole on the PGA Tour?
First at the Masters.
Oh, at the Masters, okay.
Yeah, and it was a big
Sneaky,
wind.
Tough hole.
Well, the wind was blowing hard left to right, and he had gotten up there, and I'm sure he was more nervous than he was because it's his first Masters, and he kind of off hit it, and the wind just hit it there, and then I'm on the other side where all the pine needles are with his old coach, Doc Belts, and I heard a clunk, and I said, where's the ball? No ball. Then we hear another, no ball. Finally, the third of them trickles out, and then I think he 3-putted for a 7, but he bounced back with a birdie, made the cut, finished 36th.
Yeah.
So when you're beating the best guy, with the best guys in the world, but give him another 25 yards, he might have had a different career.
Sure. Yeah, his strength always was his accuracy off the tee.
Yeah, he was.
His putting.
Many times he was the most accurate for a time period. I think 6-7 months he was. But his irons just didn't match his. When you can hit your driver, you should be able to hit anything. I mean, that's the way and most guys say, well, I can't hit my driver, but I can hit my irons, or vice versa. But, and see, being hard on yourself, 20 feet's no good.
Yeah.
But to a guy who can putt and get him on the green, and he's just get me on there, I'll make it, But you are what you are. But he just kept getting better and better, and then he had very little injuries, and when he did, hardly anybody knew, because he wasn't a guy to say, I pulled a muscle here, and he did that one time. I found out of his wife Alicia that he'd pulled a muscle, and it was bothering him, but he played through it, and but it was fun. I mean, it was really a fun time for me. I met a lot of nice caddies, some really good ones, and a lot of coaches that I didn't know for all these guys, and And it was nice to see that we were always on the same page as teaching, because we'd walk together and say, well, what are you working on with Billy Horseshoe? And this guy that he was from Michigan that worked with Billy and a bunch of other guys. He's now working at TPC in Jacksonville. Todd Anderson, and he worked at Egypt Valley, I think it was, for Lynn Chanson.
Oh, okay.
And then he went on to what he's doing, and he's a top-notcher. He's a professional guy, and so we always talked. And man, Helga Brer's coach, his coach, Charlie Epps, was from Texas, but we had played a practice round in 1978 at Cherry Hills, and he gets on the 13th hole. It was a par 5 going up the hill and left, and he was a stocky guy. And I hit a decent one. He was maybe 30 yards ahead of me. And he got out there, and he said, well, I don't think anybody knocked one by that one, you know. And he had to run 2 steps to look, and I had to go up a little more to see kind of where you want to hit it. There was no, you know, place to, you just had to make sure you know where you're going. There was no trees you could aim at or anything. But so we were on the putting green, and behind us was Seve Ballesteros, and it was Chichi Rodriguez and Jack Nicklaus. And we hear the balls bounce up, and we putted because Johnny Miller was in front of them. You're only supposed to hit 1 ball to the green. That's what they tell you. Okay. Well, Johnny Miller should have been broke, because the guy was hitting a lot of them. But out in the fairway, Seve was waiting and hit an iron in that green. And I said, Charlie, I don't think you hit your ball that good. But he's still back with Angel now, and Angel's, you know, come back from, you know, from being incarcerated, and he's doing real well. Yeah. I'm sure he needs the money.
So I'm kind of curious, you know, Brian's been playing on PGA Tour for 15 years. How often were you able to go out to the tour events and watch him play?
Well, I made sure that I went to all the majors that he was, you know, the PGAs and US Opens and the playoffs, you know, like in New York. We were there when he won, he was playing and all that stuff, and probably went out there on an average 6-7 times. You know, you don't have to be out there every week.
Sure.
But if you got, like some Mark McCann, you know, from South Africa, he's got Martin Laird and a bunch of guys, and Scribner from, he's got a guy, just J.J. Spawn, he's got him, and a couple other guys. Well, you're going to live out there, and I didn't want to live out there, but yeah. Traveling's fun, but it's a lot of organization, you know, missing planes, and, you know, I've been fortunate in luggage and all that, but
how often did you actually work with Brian? Did you have a set schedule, or would Brian call you and say, hey,
no,
I'm a mess right now,
anybody
I need help?
teach, you call me. Okay. Because, I mean, if you set it up that way, you know, because some people will, you know, I'll practice and then they don't. But he was, you know, in love with what he did, and when he was in college, he'd drive back from Oakland and come all the way up to Coldwater, and then we'd have enough to work on it. You know, it was usually an hour and a half. And got what he wanted and went back, because some of the coaches, you know, they're not really teachers. Like his Jim Belts, his old assistant coach from Oakland, was a dentist and a wounded warrior himself, and they're not capable of teaching. And I think there's an art to, you know, I've been teaching since 1974. And I worked at a couple of Jewish clubs where you give 700-800 lessons a year.
Wow.
So, yeah. and you know, you learn from others, you learn from other teachers, you keep learning and watching and study. I still study swings, you know, so, because everybody's different, their strengths. You know, Mo Norman, I was very fortunate to play with 3 times and film him twice. I got film with him, and one of the greatest ball strikers I ever saw in my life. But to teach what he does, it makes sense, but it won't work for everybody. It's just not going to work.
Well, I've watched some Mo Norman videos I've tried, and yeah, it's...
yeah, Mo was great.
So, you know, what I was kind of curious about is a lot of these guys, they reach the pinnacle, they reach the PGA Tour, you know, they might have had a long-term coach since they were a kid, but then they move on to some of these, you know, top nationally recognized coaches, your Sean Foley's, your Hank Haney's, you know, but Brian stuck with you his entire career. Was there ever any conversation about Brian seeing anyone else?
No, like I said, I wanted him to, you know, I said, you know, if you don't feel that you're getting better, and again, I said, you know, I don't own you. Go see somebody. You know, it won't upset me. All I want you to be is successful. Get more information if you think you need it. And he just never did. Now, some guys, Martin Laird, when he was working with Mark McCann, you know, he was steep and he wanted to hook the ball, and Mark said, well, you can't hook the ball from there.
Steep, yeah.
You're going to have to make too many things, so I'm not going to work with you. Now, how do you tell Martin Laird you're not going to work with him? But 6 months, I need you.
Yeah, he's back.
He said, well, we're not going to hit no hook. But no, he just stuck with, you know, with me. And
well, obviously that must mean you guys have had a great relationship, that he's...
I think we did.
You know,
I mean,
25 years plus.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned that you guys have never had a contract.
Never had a written contract. No, it was a handshake.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And it worked out well for me, and then, you know, hopefully, you know, his career, that it worked out well for him. But, you know, he's got FedEx points. When he gets older, he'll have that, and he's going to have his cuts made. So all that.
Almost 200 cuts made, and I think it was 189. I looked it up.
Something like that.
353 PGA Tour starts, so that's a pretty good percentage.
So yeah, I mean, so there's plenty there, and he could walk away from it. I've never asked him, well, you think you're going to play the seniors?
Yeah. I
may when he's in town just to get his thoughts, but that's 8 years away.
Yeah, it's a long time still.
Yeah, you may. Yeah, who knows?
But speaking of yourself, you're still giving lessons. You're still teaching. You do some teaching out here at Cascades at the driving range with some kids. So, you know, do you have any other students that you're excited about right now? Or
I have a new fella that works for the Richmonds, Drew Blackmore, who played.
Yep, I know Drew.
Yeah, and Drew started about 2.5 years ago and paid his dues, and he's getting better and better. I've got my grandson Wyatt over in the chair over there, and he's just starting. Now he's starting to get excited, but Drew's come along now that he feels more competitive. So his bad rounds now are, you know, high 70s, where, you know, his first spring thaw was like 92 here. So you learned a valuable lesson too, because, you know, that's a little more pressure. You're playing competitively, you're not moving the ball, you're putting everything out, and then the next year he got a little better. And so I'm looking for Drew to, you know, he really enjoys it and plays as much, just got married and doing all the right things in life, and got some young kids, but, you know, I'm getting up there, and if anybody else I thought could make the tour, I've had some guys I thought that would or should have tried the tour, but they got to college and they didn't do any more. But, you know, that's up to the individual how much he wants it, because, you know, we had the Hill brothers and Brian from here, but how many guys get out there? I mean, my best, I missed it by 2 in Texas years and years ago, 1980 or something like that, and that was my last one.
And yeah, but you have to have that work ethic, and Brian certainly
He does have a work ethic.
He had that drive.
He's not afraid to pound some balls and play, and that's what you got to do. So what we eventually did, especially when he's in Fort Lauderdale, was that, you know, I was staying in West Palm Beach, and it was only about a 50-mile drive to, you know, Fort Lauderdale, and then we were at the TPC where they used to play the Honda, and we'd work on the range, and then we go on the course, because you can get more stuff done and strategy, because that's all part of it. You know, I think kids they don't have a game plan, they don't have, they don't know what to do in certain situations, you know, where to get out of jail card, they go for everything and ends up, you know, turning a bogey into a double or a triple, and that gets the scores up. So the pattern I'd see with kids where they, you know, they'd go 4, 4, 3, 7, and then a couple pars, and then another 8, and by that time they've shot in 42, and the score didn't indicate they were any good, but if they get rid of all those high numbers, they're pretty good. So that's a learning.
Yep,
it's a learning thing.
Well, I know you've had a great playing and teaching career, and you know, obviously very proud of what Brian has accomplished over his career. And we're all excited that Brian's going to be in town for the Hall of Fame ceremony. It's going to be nice to see him again. I appreciate you coming on, Gary. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy does a pretty good job, everything he does.
Well, thanks, Gary.
Very proud of him.
So Brian Stewart, September 21st at Ella Sharp Golf Course. I believe that the ceremony, induction ceremony, is generally at 1:30 in the afternoon. It is open to the public, so anyone is welcome to come out. And thanks for watching The Right Approach, brought to you by Cascades Golf Course.